Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Andrew Turner, host of the Praxi Pod, and today we have Mr. Tiankai Feng. Welcome, Tiankai. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Yeah, all good here.
So, I know that you're a busy boy, and I know that, getting you on these shows is obviously a bit of a coup. I don't know if there's going to be any musical instruments involved today, but I know you're kind of legendary on LinkedIn about actually singing
hmm
and playing musical instruments. For
hmm
people that don't know you, I mean, maybe you can explain a little bit of an intro to the audience and explain what's going on in Tiankai as well at the moment.
Yeah, sure. I try to be basically someone who makes data more approachable and fun. And I use all the talents I have in my portfolio of talents to make that happen. And one of them is music, right? So I do play the piano, I write songs, I sing. So I basically use my musical talents to make some parodies about data or like some songs about data. I had a whole rap song about data governance called Governors of Data, which was my to date most successful song ever, I would say. It has like 40,000 views on YouTube, which is quite amazing for a song about data governance. But that is one of them. The other ones is like making jokes, being humorous, basically, and not too serious about things. And I'm creating memes or like write funny posts about things as well. And I mean, this is also part of my style of, for example, writing the book about humanizing data strategy, right? And using a bit more my personality and some more entertaining ways to basically write about them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, you making me bringing sexy back. That famous Justin Timberlake song.
Yes.
With the
Yeah.
kind of you bringing data governance back. I
Yes.
don't-
It's a good thing because data governance was never actually gone, but it did go through a rebranding over recent years. So it, in a way, it came back sexier a little bit, but could use still some more sexification, if that makes any sense.
no, but you said it. You said it came back in a certain. It's kind of made a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah.
What made you say that?
I think that the resurgence mainly came from two directions, right? One is probably about innovation. So the whole hype around AI now and generative AI and LLMs, they shed a new light
Never
onto
heard of it. I
the
never heard of it. Is that something?
exactly. No, but they have basically shed a light on the importance of a good data foundation, right? And a lot about data foundations is governing it right. So data quality, data security, all of that is in a good state. And the other side is regulations, which is closely associated with innovation, I would say. But especially in Europe, all of the recent laws and regulations that are new or are enforced now have created that pressure on organizations to be better in their processes and be better to be compliant. And a lot of that is then tying to governance mechanisms and governance actions as well. So from those two directions, data governance is kind of coming back and being more important than ever, I would say.
So you did say regulation, not revelation.
Not,
Presumably, is that?
no.
It was like I saw a light. I saw a light.
It
it was
told
the
me to
it
do
was
data
the,
governance.
it was
Exactly.
the data governance messiah. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, actually, just before lockdown, we did because I run the Agile Data London community in obviously surprisingly enough in London, and we ran an event called Data Governance is Dead.
Uh-huh.
Long live data governance, and we used some
Right.
kind of we used some imagery of basically some zombies, a bit like the Michael Jackson Thriller video,
Sure.
as kind of promoting the event. It's quite good fun actually. We had a couple of well, we had actually Nicola Askin was on that
Yes.
session, and
Absolutely.
the data governance lady or um, lady of data governance. So it's like Lady of the Lake, isn't it? No, Lady of
Yeah.
the Data Governance.
I think she calls her the data governance coach, and that is her best branding ever because coaching itself in the data governance space is the really welcoming and really nice way to drive data governance, right? So it's really cool. Yeah.
It's a lifetime's work. Is that you never finished?
Yes, that's true. I would agree with that.
So, I mean, for people who are listening, I mean, you touched on a couple of things there. You said about this whole, you know, tidal wave tsunami of AI and all these three-letter acronyms and four-letter acronyms that are coming out of,
hmm
I don't know, and strange animals called llama, which apparently is a model now.
Exactly.
And all these, kind of these, the things about the technology industry, it always comes out with bizarre names, and then you find out the source of it. I don't know if you know. You probably know this, that the source of Python. Python as a name.
I know Python. I didn't know the source of it. What is the origin of
the source of it?
Python?
Is because Monty Python, right, was the famous comedy. So I don't know if you know the editor. There's an editor, or there's there's some kind of editor. It's called Idle. Have you heard of Idle? There's an IDLE,
and
it's an IDE. I think it's an IDE for Python. And
and Eric Idle and stuff.
Eric Idle, exactly, was one of the Pythons.
I see.
So
I see.
So I didn't know that, but then I just thought that is typical technology. They kind of think of a bizarre bridge to that. So that's why it's called Python, apparently.
Very interesting. Okay. Wow, cool.
So you learned something today. You see, you thought you were going to be the expert, and I'm telling you, I'm giving you all these gifts.
Exactly.
Make sure they don't appear on those next memes. But you mentioned about this whole thing about AI, and obviously Gen AI is more recently. Obviously AI has been around for a while, but machine learning, deep learning, all that kind of stuff. Have you got any perspectives on? Because it kind of brings a new level of complexity to governance, doesn't it? About what do you govern, how do you govern it, and how do you validate it? Because actually, there's these large language models which have got, I don't know, so many notes on the number of, amount of information. Oh yeah, look at the size of my model. It's got trillions and billions and millions and zillions, and it's and you go, so what? But anyway, I'm being facetious, but how do you govern that kind of thing? I mean, have you come across those kind of questions? I presume that's kind of a burning question to quite a few of the people you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think that one of the new buzzwords is AI governance, right? And that itself is an evolution from what was called responsible AI before, right? And so it does follow that line of saying we need to be more ethical, more responsible, and nicer to society about applying all of these new advanced technologies and methods. And AI governance itself is not really defined as an industry standard, right? So everyone knows and agrees that we need to govern AI in a better way, but there's not an agreement yet on how to exactly do it. The way I see it, and I think that one actually came from Bob Zeiner in one of his articles. When we talk about the kind of intersection between data governance and AI governance, there are actually three parts, right? So you have the classical traditional data governance, where it's about data quality, data security, and basically ensuring that all of the hard requirements are fulfilled. Then you have AI model governance, which is about that the quality of the models themselves and how they are developed are sustainable, they are in the right quality, they're usable, and they are scalable, right? And then you have the middle ground, which is learning data governance, right? Because all of those models need to learn from specific data, right? And beyond the data being of good quality, which is already covered before, there are other requirements towards it now, which, for example, are fairness, the lack of bias, for example, that there's no discrimination in all of this. And those are requirements that have not been part of data governance before, right? How do you actually even check for bias in data, right? Do you then have to check for specific, in personal data, you have to check for different ethnicities and check that they are not discriminated in decision-making, right? All of that is becoming more of a gray area. But this is the part that I think everyone needs to focus on now, because these new requirements that everybody agrees as important, that we are not learning from the mistakes of humanity, but rather amplify the virtues and the good things about humanity to go into the future. But for that, we need more human oversight, right? So it does feel like contrary to what AI is trying to achieve with more automation and more autonomous decision-making. Right now is the time to be a bit more human in the loop-wise involved to then actually do the right thing.
Yeah, I was just gonna quote something from Terminator, like the rise of the machines, but then obviously you need to have the humans still involved, don't you?
Exactly.
So you said there was data governance, there's AI governance, and then there was a middle ground. And what was that? What did you call that?
Learning data governance. So basically, the data that AI models are learning from.
Okay, so is that what would you call the pre-training, or?
Yeah, you could call it training data governance too, or whatever you're feeding the model to learn from to become
the sources.
a good model, right? Exactly.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose that lends into kind of things like, you've probably heard of RAG, presume it's
Yeah. Hmm.
retrieval of, augmented generation. What any view on that? Are you encouraged by that kind of technology or that kind of approach?
Yes, I do think so. I think everything that right now, I mean, what AI is good at, and not to just be too cynical about it, is that if it can build on existing references that are checked and that are of good quality, then it's really doing really well, right? Or it's for all of the tedious and routine tasks in our day to day, it does really help, right? There's a lot of like summarizing texts. It's doing great, or basically giving it a few inputs to then come up with a better way of writing it. All of that, it's great stuff, right? It's more about that if you want to really generate new disruptive value with it in your organization, then that is a different story, right? But for productivity reasons, I think it's already doing really well.
And are you seeing, like, because obviously everybody's, in the stuff that we've been talking to customers about, is that there's different levels of, um, I think, mandate, or there's different levels of kind of, season the nettle, as I would call it. You got a nettle.
Hmm.
You grab the nettle, and it may be painful at the beginning because you're trying to, you've got a steep learning curve, but then you can then break through that, and then you can actually get some breakthroughs in the impact of what you can change. Are you seeing certain types of organization that are embracing this new stuff versus, like the kind of who are the early adopters and who are the laggards? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think, I mean, with any kind of innovation related to data, the tech companies are always ahead, right? And they're not only adopting it quicker, they're the ones to actually drive the innovation, right? So with all of the NVIDIAs and the Metas and the OpenAIs and all of those, they're definitely in the driver's seat. I think what comes next, though, are those that are used to a digital business model, right? So by that, I mean, for example, e-commerce companies that are selling things about e-commerce. So they start applying AI, for example, for product recommendations or for chatbots who are giving advice for fashion ideas to their customers already. They're doing it or starting to do it well. And then after various other industries that probably are also in line, you have at the end the the regulated industries who are probably the most conservative about it, simply because it's too risky for them, right? There's just too much at stake for them to make mistakes. I think when you think about financial services, you don't want AI to become a source for crime, right? Or for fraud or for losing money, simply said, of anyone. That would never be an acceptable outcome. So this basically being the problem, and the regulated industries were always the slowest, right? Even with the cloud transformations and trying to move from on-prem to cloud, which many are still not doing, right? They will definitely be last. But then you have this nice diffusion curve, right? Of the ones that are first, then you have the middle ground at some point, and then the last ones who, no matter what, they have to join the herd.
The reason I said that was because obviously I don't disagree with you, but it's also the thing about, for organizations to change and to move, they've sometimes got to have poster childs. The analogy of you got your favorite, rock band or pop band or singer on the wall in your bedroom.
Right.
And I suppose that's the thing is, we published a blog about this last week actually,
Mm-hmm.
about the trough of disillusionment, as Gartner would call it. Yeah,
Interesting,
because
yeah.
because there's this thing that where last October I was in Copenhagen. I presented at the Trifork conference, Go-To conference,
Mm-hmm.
about what's beyond Gen AI, and I was speaking about that. And the interesting thing there was that there's a thing about the skills that people are going to have to be upskilled with, like prompt
Right.
engineering and actually embracing some of these tools and trying them out and getting comfortable with them. But then there's also the kind of new roles that are going to come out from the Gen AI initiatives, or
Mm-hmm.
other roles may be kind of redefined, because effectively you've got, to the point you were saying about certain tasks you can actually pass over to a chatbot or a in certain use cases you can redeploy the workloads to, rather than a human, the machine can do it. Yeah,
Right.
as long as you train the machine and you govern the machine properly, as you said at the beginning.
Right.
Like everything with the hype cycle, unless you actually get real poster childs out there, then people can't really hold on to anything. It doesn't become real. It becomes still a bit
Mm-hmm.
ethereal. So I don't know I don't know who you have. You got any poster childs that you can think of? Obviously, not people that maybe potentially you're working with, but I mean, I saw, for example, the CEO of Klarna was an interview with Sequoia Capital, the VC in the Valley, and they were talking. He was talking about literally. It's quite interesting actually. He said that when he heard about this whole Chat GPT, he literally flew to San Francisco and hung out in San Francisco so he could meet Sam Altman, literally to try and
Wow.
work
Okay.
out how they could collaborate together. And obviously then they worked together with OpenAI, and then they obviously progressed there, and they've got that massive, call center productivity use case, which is quite a well-known one now. But I don't know if you've seen any other ones that are out there that are beneficial to help, either the early adopters or the middle group or the laggards to embrace this kind of stuff. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think from a poster child point of view, I cannot really say that I've seen any big corporate companies that have been doing it in the best way possible. It's rather that the small innovation hubs that are very niche and focused on things have been really making strides and being really advanced in what they want. And what I'm thinking when I think about actually really positive use cases, for example, I think in the US, one of the research companies in LA, I think, have developed a more advanced earthquake prediction algorithm using geodata and like weather data and all kinds of data. So that is really cool, right? Or I think a medical research company has developed like a better tool to now predict cancer, for example, as well, which is also really cool, right? All of the things are very niche, but very critical for the world, right? And I think if they get adopted by more corporates or by hospitals or by agencies and governments, etc., whatever is needed, then that could really be a game changer in the world, right? But I feel like right now all of the change is driven still by these small innovation-focused organizations. And until it's adopted, then we can talk about poster childs that are rather on a corporate level, commercial level. Right now, it's more on an innovation research level.
Yeah, I mean that's what we see is that kind of the people who can, like that analogy I came with, grab the nettle, and do something about it rather than just talking about it. I think that's where, well, their organisation is going to be seen as progressive,
Right.
and but that's why I think this thing that you mentioned a bit earlier about the whole thing that sat in the middle of those two bubbles, the kind of the AI governance and the data governance, that bridge, that learning governance, I think you called it,
Yeah.
so. Because it's still back to the basics, isn't it? Unless you've got a fundamental, strong foundation for your data. And what we're seeing is that it's just amplifying this issue with the things that's happening with AI.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So, in terms of, I mean, the things that you're doing within ThoughtWorks, what are the kind of things that you offer to companies, and what are the kind of things that you help them with?
Yeah. So I'm currently the data strategy and data governance lead in ThoughtWorks Europe. And that means that I'm basically responsible for creating the approaches and frameworks and kind of starting points to give our clients the necessary tools to be successful from a strategic and governance point of view. What that means also is basically being really hands-on involved, right, with clients and seeing what their business strategy is and how they can leverage their own data efforts and talents to drive data to success and to meet those strategic goals. In many cases, that might be also a data mesh project, though, right? So since ThoughtWorks has been there from the beginning to also basically start developing data mesh with different clients, a lot of it comes down for me to how to govern the data mesh overall from a corporate governance point of view, basically how to transform into a data mesh empowered organization, but also federated computational data governance, which is one of the principles, and how to automate governance processes as well.
And for people who don't know what a data mesh is, how would you describe that?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, so data mesh officially is called a socio-technical approach to make data more scalable and valuable, right? And the whole idea is that it finds the right balance between centralization and decentralization, and to make data increase in value through scalability and not letting central data teams become the bottleneck as it was more in the past. So that means it breaks down to four principles, right? You have domain-driven ownership rather than central ownership, meaning the business domains are owning their own data object. You have the data platform that is enabling self-service capabilities. So the domains can basically use it to create their own data product, which then leads to the third one, which is data as a product, right? So basically providing data in the shape of products to make them findable and reusable. And lastly, federated computational governance. So all of that decentralization needs some kind of harmonization and alignment. And that should happen in a federated way, plus enabled by automation and technology.
Well, what was the last one? Federated computational governance.
Correct.
That's a
official
mouthful, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's the one I have to talk about the most at work, so I'm definitely used to it now.
You call it FCG then? Is that the kind of code word?
I try to not use more acronyms. Yeah.
It's like, have you talked about FCG yet? It's like, come on, talk about FCG.
Exactly. I know. I mean, I try to not use more acronyms than I have to because I know how frustrating it is to hear too many acronyms every day.
So you said that obviously the it's an interesting thing because I think that obviously data's gone through that kind of evolution of, do you centralize it? Do you distribute it? How do you get this kind of best of both worlds?
Yeah.
So is your application the kind of the central, because traditionally when you're in a business, people have this thing called the central, the corporate data warehouse. Mm-hmm. Does that mean it's dead? Is the corporate data warehouse dead? Does the data mesh, like slay the corporate data warehouse dragon? I don't know. What's your view on that?
I don't think so. So I would say that because data mesh has gone through quite the hype over the last years, and then a little bit of a disillusioning behind it too. And I mean, Gartner themselves, they talked about data mesh being irrelevant now, right? And being dead. So there's many, I would say, opinions about what data mesh is.
Wow. Is that what they say? Is that what they say? Yeah. Data mesh is dead, long live data mesh.
Exactly. Okay. That's the new title of the new workshop. No. But basically, I would say I have a more differentiated opinion. Data mesh is not the solution for every data problem, first of all, right? And that has to be understood. Not every company needs a data mesh, especially when they're not as big and they don't have that many complicated processes. A central data warehouse is completely fine. And if you want to do data mesh, there's not one size fits all approaches. It's whatever works for you, and everybody needs to find out how they can implement data mesh in a way that works for them. And this is how basically also consulting comes in, right? So we try to find out what the right way to do is. But in some cases, it does happen that we have to tell our clients, data mesh is not solving your problems. I think what you're looking for is something else. Data mesh is probably going to make it even worse because you already have a coordination problem.
So you get a situation where people come in and say, I want a data mesh, but then they potentially don't really understand what it is or what the implications are. And then you have to kind of coach them through that. Okay, right.
Exactly.
Because you see, I remember a few years ago, you had the data lake. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. There must be some guy somewhere in an ivory tower somewhere just coming up with these buzzwords, right? Data warehouse, data lake.
All the nature references, right?
Data lake house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Then you got data. I mean, it's like, if you're a business guy, you're going, what's it all mean? It's all got data.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I do like the.
You should create a meme. You should create a meme for Tiankai where you're at a crossroads and you've got like all these. Okay, data warehouse, data lake, data mesh, data lake house, data lake.
It's too many choices, right?
Data pond, data mausoleum, data vault.
Yeah, there's what has established is if you don't take care of your data, you have a data swamp and not a data lake anymore, right? Because it's all dirty and unusable data. So that did create its life and the analogies on its own.
Yeah. So one of the things we do at Praxi, we work on what's called data classification, data curation. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that topic? Do you think that's still needed?
Absolutely. I mean, so no matter what you want or how you manage your data, having classification and curation in place means you can take the right decisions up front. And then when you want to be faster and using the data in different ways, you don't have to always rethink about what you need to take care of, right? And I think from a governance point of view, there's a lot about avoiding risk in there, right? So if you can classify data by sensitivity levels, by personal and non-personal information, by security standards, then you can derive decisions much quicker, right? About security, access mechanisms, anonymization mechanisms, whatever you want to do. So it's definitely key there, especially I think with AI, right? If you can classify data up front before it's being fed to something, you can already create mechanisms to AI to not learn from certain things and rather learn from other things to basically be a little bit more guardrail.
Because the thing is that the data's only gone one way, so that you can't do it manually, can you? That's our hypothesis, is that
Exactly.
you've got to have some help on that. So yeah, it's I think it's quite amusing, but it's not amusing. Is that what we see is that the focus on the data quality, the bit that basically gets left behind. Yeah, everyone wants to work on the sexy parts of the program or the project or the initiative. Yeah, but then unfortunately, as we both know, I think we both appreciate that if you get if those fundamental building blocks are not in a great place, it's going to be very, very stark what you get as outcomes.
Yeah.
So, but it's a bit messy, it's a bit murky, it's a bit difficult to do. Yeah. So, our hypothesis is kind of like, if you can automate that and you can build models that can actually allow you to it's like continuous curation, continuous classification, then you're going to be in a better place, because nobody wants to do it. That's how, it's like it's a bit like having a young child sat eat that food. No, I don't want to do it. No. It's like that.
Yeah. Exactly. I do think
that's a good meme. That's a good meme for that.
Yes, another good meme, right? Exactly. No, I was thinking because a few years ago, Marie Kondo was really popular, right? Her whole concept, the net mixture of tidying up things and everything. And I realized one thing, that her whole the fandom around her meant that there's a certain interest in people wanting to be tidy and wanting to have things be structured and easily accessible and neat. And this is like the intrinsic motivation of working in data governance, I feel like, right? As well. That all you want to do is for the data to be tidy and to be usable and not to be just chaotic and like dirty and everything. So in a way, the whole motivation why I work in it is like this whole, how can we easier and quicker make the data be tidy and usable? And then everyone benefits from it, right? Everyone likes something clean and neat. So I kind of always remind myself that this is the reason why I'm doing all of this. That in the end, I just want it to be good for everyone, right? So I hope that.
Well, it's that thing about collapsing the time to value into, because if you sat on the board, of a company, then you expect, or your assumption is that you're reporting numbers, the aggregation, the different dimension of your business is in a good state.
Right.
But then when there's all these different data sources flying around your organization and you don't govern it properly, then you're opening yourself up for a rocky. I'm not saying we have the situation where my numbers are right. Oh no, but my numbers are right. But my numbers are right. Yeah. But I'm not saying it's as bad as that, but because it was before. But I think just with these different data sources coming in now, with all these, it's a problem for organizations. And then when people want to look at productivity gains from this whole Gen AI initiative, we talk usually, because it's usually structured data you've got your arms around. But then if you introduce semi-structured and unstructured data, traditionally people haven't had the chance to get their arms around that.
That's
and
true.
If you look at the explosion of data, it's mainly in that the non-structured data.
Yeah, true.
Is that what you're seeing as well?
I'm definitely seeing that. I think also, with like unstructured data, I feel like we as a whole data industry have always been a little behind to make unstructured data work. So it always feels like catching up with how to make unstructured data work in the best way. And it starts with normal storage and computation, like on a basic level, and then with analyzing it, and then doing natural language processing or image recognition. All of that followed after a boom of the data already existing. It's better late than never in these kind of things, right? But I do feel like also that it continues to boom and be more and more. We just need to catch up in the right speed with these kind of things.
Yeah, what we see is the proxy for it is metadata, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
If you think about your learning governance piece, the bridge between AI and traditional data governance is metadata, because it's effectively that allows you to bind, whether it's a form It's an unstructured letter.
Absolutely.
It's a semi-structured document. It's a structured data. But then, I mean, I suppose that was the thing I was going to ask you about was who do you think owns metadata in organizations, or who should own metadata?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say there's two things to it. One is the metadata management process or processes themselves, right? And like when should metadata be created? How should it be created in the meta model, for example? And then how is it stored and maintained, right? So that process itself needs dedication. And then I would say though that the actual like creation and ownership of metadata for specific data assets, they should exist with the data ownership or data domain ownership that is defined on wider level, because they are the only ones who can ensure that it's up to date and accurate, right? And they are also ones who can then basically decommission it if it becomes not relevant anymore. So it should be associated with the ownership. This having said, I realized that it's unfair to put more and more things on data ownership. It was already an unpopular role. And you just put more stuff on it doesn't really help, right? So I'm always a fan to say that if we want to encourage people and convince them to be data owners and do all of these tasks, they need to get a toolbox to actually be able to do it in an easy way, right? So creating the right toolbox with like a data catalog and other solutions to be a toolbox of them needs to happen. Otherwise, they're not going to do their job, right? So that's kind of what we need to do.
Yeah, because I suppose that's the thing, is that's the dichotomy, isn't it? Because it's a bit like, curation, data stewards, yeah, data curators, data owners. How do you incentivize them to?
Exactly.
I mean, you said that you're passionate about making data in a good place, but then how do you win the hearts and minds of those people within your organization,
right,
to do that? It's not like a task you start and then you do and then you stop. It's continuous. That's when I see that one of the things about the organizational challenge about how do you set up for success. Have you seen any best practices around that?
Yeah, I would say that best practices of when data owners are really motivated and doing their job is when there was a possibility to tie their actions to business value, and that the credit was given to them when good decisions were made, right? So one is that they're motivated to take actions already, like this is going to have an impact of so and so many euros or dollars, right? But after they did it, the communication means thanks to the data owner who made this great decision, we were able to increase data quality, which then increased our revenue by X percentage, for example, right? So only with that kind of loop to say you're motivated and then you get the credit and the visibility for it, then it can become a nice cycle that keeps on blessing them with the right feedback and the right recognition. So what
you're saying is map it to a KPI that's important to the overall business. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
And just a quick question for clarification: when you talk about domains and you talk about data owners in domains, what's an example of a domain? Is it a function, or is it how can you give us a few examples?
Yeah, it to be honest, that's a consultancy answer, but it depends. I would say, but it really depends on how the company is structured in terms of business process, right? So, I mean, there's the way of doing it data object focused, right? Let's say there's a customer data domain, then there's a finance data domain or a product data domain, etc. So it might be also more focused on processes, right? So it could be maybe there's a sales data domain, there might be a marketing data domain, there might be a after sales data domain, and whatever works for companies to be able to autonomous, but at the same time being able to operate together with other functions.
For example, if you had I don't know, I mean, I know that previous to where you are now, you're working in a very well-known brand, consumer products brand, right? So, I presume things like order to cash, was a process area that you would run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you've got the process owner, and then I presume you then would have a data domain owner that kind of partners with the process owner. Is that how you do it?
Exactly. So that is not how I did it in my previous employer side. We did it actually on data object level and more functional. So really based on existing departments that we had, right? but it worked, right? As long as you can agree all together that cross-functional collaboration is needed and that there's authority to make decisions across departments for specific data objects that are flowing upstream, downstream across it, right? It's okay. That's why I'm saying.
So when you say departments, I mean that could be sales, supply chain,
Exactly.
marketing, finance,
Different business
etc.
units.
But then it's also another view would be to do it like by you say logically by entity, like customer, who owns customer, who owns product, who owns, I don't know, profit and loss, etc., finance objects. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you kind of got different lenses on it, basically, about what's the most appropriate lens you apply. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and again, right, the idea is the decision on what should be defined as a domain then impacts what is the best way to run data governance and data management in the end. So that's why I cannot say what is the best approach. It really depends on the culture and the business model of the company to make it.
And I suppose one of the final questions I got for you was about what's been the most, kind of mic drop moment for you, in the last 12 months around this whole AI, Gen AI data. You're on your surfboard. I know you're in Germany. I know you're in Nuremberg, but you're on. Just imagine you're in somewhere like Hawaii, right? On your or Tenerife, on your surfboard. Yeah. What's been the biggest mic drop moment you've had that you would say, really kind of shocked you, but in a good way?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say, and that is more of a personal side of me, right? But when I came across Suno and all of these musical Gen AI tools, that they could just, with a prompt, create whole pop songs that sounds pretty ready for the radio almost, I was really shocked. I was really then surprised to say, oh my God, then where does human creativity start and end, and where does it become artificial? Who knows what's going to happen in the future? And then right after, the whole intellectual property problem started, where all of these labels started suing for intellectual property infringements and stuff, right? So that became a whole thing on its own. But that is, I think, something that really shocked me, where I was questioning as a musician myself, how this all going to work out in the future. And I still don't have an answer for it, right? But it's, I think, something where if human creativity can be approximated so easily by technology nowadays, then it's really scary almost. So that's a moment.
Well, I mean, I was using Suno the other day. Actually, it's pretty impressive. Like Gamma and I mean, some of these tools are kind of like, wow. It's like
exactly.
You just literally put one prompt in. I put one prompt into Gamma yesterday, and literally had an eight slide presentation with bullet points, graphics, everything like that. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just it is kind of like it's the kind of thing I suppose that we thought about would be around before, but now actually with us being around these types of things for quite a while, it's nice to see that actually they do surprise you in a positive way.
Right.
The key thing is making sure we kind of like leverage the good bits and put the other bits back in the black box and lock the key and throw the key away.
Absolutely. Yes. Agree.
So, I mean, just final question was about, I suppose, about the future. Any perspectives on what you see the next 12, 24 months going to play out? I mean, I know that it seems like every week we seem to see something news happen, which it's difficult to keep up. Any predictions from the crystal ball, the Feng crystal ball, from Germany? You heard it here first on the Praxi Pod.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that of provocative or anything, right? But I do feel like that human beings are going to use AI and technology for all of the tedious day-to-day things more, right? I think everything can now have an assistant, no matter if it's grocery shopping or tuning on the right music for it, or preparing dinner and looking for recipes. All of that is just much more tailored and automated and easier accessible than before. And that, I think, is going to change people's lives, right? They are going to spend less time on these things, and they will be able to hopefully enjoy things more that are not tedious and having to do things more manual than before. And this having said, then the question is also where the border is, right? I've seen yesterday an interesting LinkedIn post where somebody used AI to write a formal legal letter, and it actually worked. So they basically got what they wanted from a legal dispute because of a AI-generated legal letter. And then there was basically the debate: is that the right thing to do? Like, when it actually does have serious consequences, and you're like completely on AI to do it. When does it start and where does it end? And I think a lot of those questions will pop up more in the near future. And we as a society need to answer those at some point. But yeah, I think this is roughly the direction that I'm thinking we're taking.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the final thing is that kind of like the, with the AI acts coming in Europe in obviously 2026, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I'm seeing is a lot more people want to grab hold of these types of capability. They want to try them out. They want to see how they can apply them to the business. But there's
Right.
also the legal ramifications, and also there's no precedent because we're kind of like all these things are like a white space.
Right.
So that's what I'm seeing is, and then I think it's that back to being about being brave. Otherwise you get lots of procrastination and nobody does anything, and you don't move forward as an organization. So I suppose that's the kind of the yin and the yang of it that we could see out there. But no, I mean, it's been a pleasure to have you on the episode today. Thank you for joining us from Germany.
Absolutely, this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much, Andrew.
And that was Tiankai Feng from near Nuremberg, I think you are, aren't you, in Germany?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
Who's leading data strategy for ThoughtWorks in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Andrew Turner, host of the Praxi Pod. See you in the next episode. Ciao.